see, but it'll make do. Today's story comes to us from John chapter 12.
Not gonna be enough.
Thanks for trying.
And you could maybe go lower the thing over there if you wanted. You know, you just,
Yeah, it's fine. Any of you want to talk later on, you'll just have to speak out because I might not see your hand being raised. In any case, so today's story comes to us from John chapter 12. Ooh.
Keep going.
That work?
okay, stop, perfect.
Okay, great. The dinner depicted in today's story was likely a Thanksgiving dinner for Lazarus being raised back to life. And yet there is tension in the air. After having just raised Lazarus back to life, Jesus is driven away from Jerusalem because the authorities are now seeking to kill him for having raised Lazarus from the dead. Six days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, home of Lazarus. And Lazarus and his sisters hosted a dinner for him. Martha served the table, and Lazarus was among those who joined him at the table. And then Mary took an extraordinary amount, almost 3/4 of a pound, of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. And she came and anointed Jesus' feet with it, and then wiped his feet dry with her hair. And the whole house was filled with the perfume. And Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who was about to betray him, complained, "This perfume is worth a year's wages. Why wasn't it sold and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He carried the money back and would take what was in it. And Jesus said to him, "Leave her alone. This perfume was to be used in preparation for my burial, and this is how she has used it. You will always have the poor among you, but you won't always have me." So, now I invite you to respond to today's story with wonder and creativity. I wonder what the atmosphere was like at that dinner before Mary anointed him with perfume. What was the energy there? What were they discussing?
Lazarus was recently resurrected.
Sure, yeah. He had just been raised from the dead. Yeah. So,
Is that what adds sort of mood of happiness that he's back, and also,
yeah, so some happiness, some joy there, some, I don't know, trepidation maybe, I'm hearing in what you're saying.
I have always wondered why Lazarus and not everybody else. If you can raise Lazarus from the dead, what about whoever?
Sure. Yeah. What about everybody else? That's a hard question in light of today's story.
I also spent more time thinking about Lazarus today than I ever have, and that it should probably be a gospel according to Lazarus. Like, he was brought back. He should have gone on to do amazing, great things
Yeah.
that there's Bible stories about, but as far as I know.
Yeah, so Lazarus was raised from the dead, but we never actually hear a word from him. He never speaks.
Why isn't he like a disciple who went out and things are named after?
Yeah.
Like you, I hadn't thought about Lazarus for a long time. But I remember when I was in college, I ran across a poem, and I think it's by C.S. Lewis, but I'm not sure. And I now want to find it. But it was about Lazarus, and the point was his courage in being willing to obey his Lord in coming back when he'd actually passed on to heaven, what it meant for him to come back, which I think is a really interesting thought. To come back, I mean, okay, being somebody who's older and looking at the end, and in the last couple of weeks, we've had several friends and acquaintances die, and it's like, okay, yep, I'm at the end, you know, and I don't know how long I have, maybe a lot longer than I think, but it's very clear to me stuff happens when we're this age, and so it's poignant to me to think about that, and to think about what does it mean that he came back, and the courage of coming back, because the way the world is right now, there's sometimes I think, well, kind of might be a relief to go, because I'm like, ooh, what's happening here? Is everything
the world
gonna
is
really
hard.
fall apart? Yeah.
The world is hard, the world is scary.
I listened to the Lazarus stuff, and I went to, when I was growing up, I went to a Catholic girls' school that was, in retrospect, run by like these fairly radical nuns. They were very focused on service and like instilling this idea of service, and like to like a really distinctive degree. And what I remember about Lazarus is not Lazarus at all. We never talked about Lazarus. It was about Martha and Mary, and how they went, how deep their mourning was, and how they went to find Jesus, and then the washing of the feet afterwards, like all their labor. Like, I feel like we talked about it a lot in school when I was growing up. I don't know if that's true in other Christian traditions, but yeah, we were like really focused on what all they did and how hard they worked to make Lazarus come back. And like Lazarus is like this black hole to me. He doesn't exist, it's his sisters.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we do hear so much more about and from Mary and Martha. Yeah.
I wonder what's going on in kind of the transition. Like, how does one transition from dinner to bringing out 3/4 pound of an expensive perfume and starting washing someone's feet? Like, there's a vibe that goes into that. And I just wonder what.
Say more about that vibe.
I don't quite know. But I just know that's not something that most people would suddenly transition into. That's not like an activity that, like, hey, let's wash feet with hair.
Sure.
You know, that's new.
Yeah, so we talked about how there was a joyful element to the dinner, but also the anointing is, you know, a burial rite. And that's how Jesus at least recognizes it in the moment. And so there's probably also, you know, not just a joyful vibe.
Yeah.
There's something of a transition between we're celebrating Lazarus is back, he's alive again, and now we're moving to anoint Jesus for his
Yeah.
burial.
And
There's a spooky foreshadowing of here, and this was bought for my death, but why was it around?
Mhm.
Like, was it Lazarus? Was it left over from when Lazarus was supposed to be dead?
Interesting,
she's
yeah. So
recycling
was
it?
this perfume meant to be used for Lazarus? That had never occurred to me before. An interesting thought, yeah.
Goes back to the dinner, or like just the mood of the dinner for Lazarus. It's like when you're celebrating that he's back. It's like I can't wrap my mind around what that feels like. That's like someone's back from a trip, right? You gotta have like a thing when you're celebrating someone back from a trip. But the other thing about Lazarus being a black hole is like he didn't do anything. Like he died, came back, but like it's not you're celebrating someone, right? But it's like he didn't even go on a trip and take pictures and tell you about it. He's just I came back to life. So I don't know what he would say about it. And it's got to feel profoundly strange for him too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's not even a question of like, what was it like?
You almost feel like you're celebrating because like all I did was die. I'm better, I guess, right? But even if you heal from disease or fever or something like that, you feel like I overcame something.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I have a few things I'm wondering about. Well, first of all, like, this culture was so much better at grief than we are, that I have a hard time imagining there was joy because there were these long grieving periods and these families grieved together. And so I have a really hard time imagining that they would have all just flipped a switch and it would have been like toasts and whatever. And then I also wonder, like, is Lazarus just another person to take care of even as the living? Because I don't think someone who was so ill and had this like prolonged sickness and died that you bring him back to life and he's like a provider.
Sure.
So I'm kind of wondering, like, I don't know how much joy
Yeah.
could have been there. And I don't know that that was a culture that needed joy. It might have been completely silent.
Sure.
All the things we don't make space for in America in the 21st century.
Yeah. Yeah, so that we don't know if Lazarus was a provider for his family, his sisters after his death, or whether he needed more care than he was able to give. And so what that meant for Mary and Martha, his return in terms of the practical, care and caregiving. It's an interesting question. Yeah, and the grief, they likely wouldn't just jump over that. Were you gonna say?
I have a question that threw me off. So, at the end of the mourning period
Mm-hmm.
in Judaism, is there like a communal meal?
I don't know.
Because I was wondering if this was actually the meal they had planned to have for his death, and they're still having the meal.
Yeah. It's possible that there was already a meal planned, and it was supposed to be one for mourning, for
Yeah.
grieving. And then it was very different.
Yeah, but thinking about like you can't just flip the switch, like maybe they're still
Yeah.
going on rituals.
I wonder why Mary wiped Jesus' feet with her hair.
I got this one. I was thinking about this.
And me too.
After two daughters who love their beauty products, my first thought was, she is not going to let that really good scent go to waste. She's going to get it
It stays with her.
into her essence and carry it with her.
Yeah, it stays with her as much as it does with Jesus. Perhaps even more. I mean, there's probably more of it in her hair than on his feet, right?
So mine was more selfish motivation.
No, I had the exact same reaction. I've never thought about that. I've always thought in the past, oh, it's really weird using her hair and how messy. And today when I heard the story, it was like, wow, what great conditioner. She should have conditioner on her hair, and that it would probably smell, for her age, she would go to bed in this cloud of scent, probably for several days. And that the extravagance of it, because it's so expensive, but she would have just loved that in her hair. It would have been so beautiful, and the scent would have been so great. And that just, it totally flipped today from being a weird thing to saying, well, yeah,
I also grew up Catholic. I grew up Catholic and went 13 years Catholic school and then into the convent for a bit. We were always made to cover our hair when we went to church for anything, a visit, we covered it. In high school, we had a little chapel veil in our pocket, so if all of a sudden we're going to go to church for something, we had it. And we were taught that a woman's hair, I remember word for word, is her crowning glory. And I didn't identify with that because I had this little nothing hair. I still do. But we always had to cover our hair for that reason, and it was a sacrifice that we would, and an act of humility. And then when you went in the convent, of course, if you are pre-Vatican II people or see it in movies, there's a headpiece that covers their hair. And that's another thing too, and they changed their name. It's all about sacrifice and giving to God and what have you, but I so remember, your hair, the woman's hair is her crowning glory. And my sister and my mother and I all have terrible hair. They have worse. We always thought, well, we got you. But that was the whole thing, was sacrifice and humility.
Interesting, yeah. And there's definitely a cultural understanding of, modesty around keeping the woman's hair up in public and with other, with men around or whatever, I think at that time as well.
It's more for Romans and Greeks. I mean, the Jews did not have as much stuff around hair, but then you don't know who's writing this.
Okay.
So if whoever is actually writing this down, if they've totally internalized a Roman custom where a woman's going to be very cloistered and completely covered, versus a Jewish custom that is less.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a very intimate act.
Yeah.
It's a very personal act. It's using a part of your body to wash someone else.
Yeah.
That's just a very personal thing to do.
Right. Yeah.
It speaks to how, it speaks at least to me to two things. One, how close Jesus was in their family, that act would have been acceptable. And two, it seems like a little bit of a thank you, hey, for bringing my brother back.
A little bit of what?
Of a thank you for bringing my brother back.
Yeah, so there's something very intimate in the sharing, like using her body, as you said, her hair to wash his body.
Yeah.
And there's a deep sense of connection and gratitude. So Jesus also says then to Judas, you will always have the poor with you, but you won't always have me. I wonder why he responds in this way.
Because he all along has known that he's going to be dying.
So he knows he's going to be dying.
He
Yep.
also says things like that, and I'm not always going to be here for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the very obvious, you won't always have me means, he's going to die. Yeah.
I think it's kind of be in the moment. Judas wanted to maybe sell that expensive oil for money.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus accepted it, the anointing oil, and be in the moment. He's here, but the poor will always be here, so you can help them later. But right now, we're doing this.
Yeah, so there's an element of here is what is most important right now. It's
Jesus could have forbade her from doing it. She walks out with this jar of stuff, and he could have said, oh, don't. But he allows her to do it. as part of the whole story. So,
Yeah. Sure.
yeah, he could have refused her.
Yeah, he's, you know, there's at least some level of agency in the acceptance of
Right.
the act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I found myself thinking about healthcare workers in moments when they're particularly stressed. I mean, during the pandemic and during HIV/AIDS home caregivers in Africa. And one of the mantras I heard when I was involved in some of that work was, you need to take care of yourself first before you take care of others. And it's the phenomenon of burnout among healthcare providers is real. And to me, that passage has always spoken to that. You know, you need to take care of each other. Yes, we're taught by Jesus to, and he talks a lot about taking care of the poor, but it's a message to take care of yourself and take care of one another. She needed to do something for him, and maybe that's part of what gave him courage to go through what he went through, you know, knowing that somebody really cared that much.
Sure. Yeah, that acceptance of care for oneself as one is caring for others, it allows you to continue doing that.
Just today, I'm thinking about a statement, you always have the poor with you. And immediately we think of, because of the story, we think of the poor as people with less fortune, less money, less housing and food and everything. But just today here, I'm thinking the broader, I think Jesus is always bigger than the immediate. The poor of heart, mind, and spirit, you know, and health. And certainly we do always have those, and sometimes we are the poor. And I know myself, I worked in this neighborhood for 13 years with teenagers doing social justice work. And it's so easy to focus more on the immediate feeding of the hungry, working at the food banks, giving out lunches and things. And that's really good. But it's easy to get lost in that and forget the spiritual, your own, like you said, your own spiritual hunger, your own, I mean, sometimes the hunger, you don't even feel it, you're so distracted. You know, oxygen on yourself, yes, you need to sleep and stay strong, but it's so easy, and looking back thinking, God, did I do that? Because it, you know, it was 24/7 practically for me, because of my position, but, so thank you, just today, I hear this differently.
Sure. Yeah, so there's more than one type of poverty, more than one type of wealth. Yeah.
And always go back to Jesus in some, whatever way you can.
I've never liked the phrase, the poor will always be with you. It feels, well, it brings up two things for me. One, it feels possibly a little bit kind of, revisionistic.
Okay.
You know, that phrase right afterwards of course we know that, Judas was a thief and he would pocket the money. To me, that section feels kind of maybe inserted a little later. Just, in the voice. And then if you think, when I think to, Acts of the Apostles, which basically starts with, hey everybody, let's sell our stuff and bring it to people, kind of, a manual on how to do that. I really don't know if I totally believe that Jesus would have said, the poor will always be with you. I'm not totally sure I believe that.
Okay.
And I'm not totally sure that that's a statement that reflects what I would like to understand.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're not seeing how that phrase, that teaching, can be in line with the Jesus,
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder how this story connects with what happens after Jesus' death, when the women come to anoint his body there.
even when you anoint somebody after the death, I think you're doing it to make their body nice, or if you're rubbing lotion on somebody's hands and hospital, but you get lotion on your own hands. There's a benefit to the caregiver of doing this. And I wonder, for me, when you mentioned that what happens afterwards, like the anointing of his body, it just made it like really sharp for me of like the way we process mourning as the mourners,
Yeah.
right? That there's a benefit for the person giving.
Yeah, so the physicality is part of how we mourn and grieve,
Yeah.
but also there's that, you know, the giver also gets.
Yeah.
And hearing
Yeah.
what you're saying, that the women who went to the grave to anoint his body would have, you know, had there been a body, they would have had the anointing oils on themselves
I mean,
as well.
Internally, it's
Yeah.
a way of processing the death,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, very structured thing
Yeah.
to get past it, but then externally you have the sign of that with getting the
Right.
oils in there.
Yeah.
So
mean,
is this Martha and Mary, the ones that are with Mary Magdalene at the resurrection? At the tomb? Is it these two? When they talk about the women go on Easter morning, is it this Martha and Mary who are joining Mary Magdalene?
I think not. There are different accounts of which women were there. It's always Mary Magdalene. In John, I believe it's only Mary Magdalene, so which is where this came from. And in others, I don't think Mary and Martha are included there either. Yeah.
It's just,
This story is it only in John?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I thought, okay.
I was thinking about Lazarus's family, or just if they were able, they were able to afford this oil for burial or to have in their house. It seems like they were a family who had some money to really afford this.
It seems like it. Somehow, she had this perfume. Don't know how they were able to afford it, but yeah, it seems like there's some means there. What does that say to you?
That they're not the poor.
They're not the poor, yeah, sure. So given all that, given all we've discussed, I wonder where the good news is for you in today's story.
I think the good news is in the power of grieving ritual, and in the power of ritual in general. This, it was clearly healing for this group to come together as a meal, and then there was something healing, to anoint Jesus' feet with oil. Those are powerful rituals, and there's power there.
So there's power in the healing.
Yeah.
I really liked what we heard from several people about kind of the preparing Jesus at this moment before he goes through his passion and death. And that's to look for the ways that we get prepared and helped by our community and by others to move through difficult times.
So how our community helps prepare us for difficult times.
It has me thinking about my own mother, where I don't believe she's gonna live another year, and I'm going to see her in a couple weeks, and so I'm imagining myself massaging her hands. This is a difficult thing because our family, her family, is not really touchy-feely. Not a lot of hugs or foot massage, none of that was in my family. So when I had a son, I tried to be the opposite of that. But it's still a barrier for me to offer this love to my mother in a tactile manner. So it just got me thinking. always
Yeah.
good news to me
Yeah.
about what I might do or what I could do.
Yeah, the physical touch, a love language, as they talk about. Yeah, it can be so important, and also can leave us wondering how to express love when that's not a commonly used language.
Yes.
Okay.
I just, what I was just thinking of is it's not even really good news, but I mean, one of the things I think about when I read about this is like, wait, everything, it just must have been a very smelly world that you have nard, which I really want to know what the heck nard is.
Yeah, I do too.
But that there, maybe the smell around them was still so bad that Jesus is like, you know what? Let's use it now. let's use the nard now. Things smell so bad.
Lazarus had just come from the tomb.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you know,
Yeah.
smell.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are not as familiarized with the smells of the world in
Yeah.
our today's culture. We tend to keep things clean and free of smell.
Yeah. And isn't that exactly what the sisters say when Jesus calls him out of the tomb? One of the, I can't remember what Mother
Yeah.
Mary says, it's been 3 days, you'll smell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
As children, we were taught that we use incense to symbolize how our prayers, like the smoke, rise to God. And so we bought into that. And in my childhood, they incense a lot. But then in our adult training, we learned that yes, they walked and they didn't have daily showers like most of us do, and so that was where incense started, was because the temple was just, people were choking because it was awful.
Sure. Well, thank you all for wondering along with me.